All right, so in this video, I'm sharing my process of how I batch a month's worth of content in 3 hours. And this is for creating content on LinkedIn. So let's get right into it. The first step is really about understanding your purpose and your why. So you may be job searching, you may be trying to sell a product or a service, or you may just be looking to expand your network and meet new people. There are different reasons why you decided to start creating content on LinkedIn. So knowing your why will ultimately help you know what kind of content you're going to create. And this is what people often call creating a niche. So in terms of your niche, this is your area of specialization. This is what your content is about, and this is your area of focus. So establishing one will help you to ensure that you are attracting the right people who are coming to your content depending on the goal that you have. So for example, I usually create content around personal branding, introversion, leadership, and career development. So those are typically the kinds of topics that I talk about because those are typically the kinds of clients that I'm trying to attract, and also the kind of like-minded professionals that I want to network with or interact with. So typically my content is around that. And I have come across situations where people will tell me, well, how about extroverts? Or how about this person? Or why aren't you talking about that? There's a lot of whataboutism that can happen on LinkedIn. But at the end of the day, once you've narrowed down the focus that you have, you've narrowed down your niche, you want to stick to it and really ensure that you are creating content that reaches those kinds of people. Because at the end of the day, those are the kinds of people you're trying to reach, and those are the people that your content will also resonate with. The second thing is I have content themes or topics. As I mentioned in my example, I was talking about introversion, personal branding, leadership, and career. Those are the topics that I stick around, but I also have certain themes. So a lot of my content, I would say like 70% of it is more educational, where someone can get a quick tip that they can implement right away to make a difference in their career or their business. And then I'll say I have like 20% of my content that's more asking content, I call it, which is like sign up to join the Introvert at Work quiz. And in this quiz, you will be able to learn the most marketable skills as an introvert. Or for example, join our newsletter, the Introvert at Work newsletter. Or I am making a hard sell where I'm telling them I have a program, advance her career, this is the benefit, or join our VIP personal branding days. This is when I'm making a clear ask of what exactly they can do to benefit from my services. And then I'll say like the next 10% is motivational, inspirational, and a little bit of like life updates. I do run, so a lot of my content, I would say in the other category, are more about like fitness, running, and sometimes, just motivational quotes. So that's typically how I organize my content, and that's how I spread it out for a given week and a given month as well. I do also share stories. So I would say like I share stories, but the stories can fall in any category. I can share a story that's educational, a story that is more an ask, and also a story that is more motivational. So storytelling is a framework that I use in my content, but it's not the only one. But I would say it's one of the most dominant ones when it comes to creating content on LinkedIn. There are certain posts that do really well on LinkedIn. Like if you write something like entry level shouldn't require any experience, or you have posts that are like fail, and succeed or accepted. There are certain standard posts on LinkedIn that do very well. I try to stay away from such posts just because it doesn't align with my brand. I personally don't like it, and I am not necessarily trying to go viral. And I know it's a weird thing to say, but when I started on LinkedIn, I had gone viral quite a number of times, and the mental toll that it takes to be able to deal with that number of responses, and you're opening yourself up to so many people who wouldn't have seen your content in the past, and not all of those people are the right kind of people. So you get a lot of engagement, but they're not the right people that you're looking for. And so I have learned over time to find that balance between being visible and then also going viral, because at the end of the day, my ultimate purpose for being on the platform is to gain visibility for my business and to be able to network with like-minded individuals. So anyone who doesn't fit within that category, I don't necessarily want to have them in my network, because there is a lot of negativity on the platform as well. So I need to protect myself and my energy. So that's a boundary that I have set over time as I've been on LinkedIn. So next, in terms of tools that I use, I typically organize everything in Asana. So in Asana, I have different tasks. And for a given month, like I'll open a new task for that month. And throughout the month, as I'm hearing things or I'm getting ideas, I'll just write like a short summary of what the post could be. I'm not writing out the full post. So, you know, if I go to a meeting or I read a book, or I'm at a speaking engagement and I hear something that is related to what I do that I think could be beneficial to my audience, I'm just taking those notes down. So what happens is that when I do have that block of 3 hours to sit down and actually create content, I already have all these ideas that I've been taking down and noting throughout the month. So when I sit down and create content, I'm not starting from scratch. I already have all these ideas that I can work with. And this has helped me greatly, because at some point I realized, you know, sometimes I'm in the shower and then I get an idea for a LinkedIn post. And in that moment, once I come out of the shower, that's not when I'm going to start writing a whole post. And, you know, I'm not going to do that at that point. But if I just write like a sentence that's going to help me remember, it's much easier. So that's a strategy that has worked for me, just keeping notes, and then I come back to it when I have a little bit more time. From there, in terms of getting ideas for content, I do repurpose content. I've been posting on LinkedIn for a little over 3 years. So I have tons of content that I've posted over the years. I post at least minimum 5 times a week. So there's like a whole archive of posts that I can go back to. Some of the posts, even like I go back to posts I wrote 6 months ago and I don't even remember the post. So a lot of times people remember them, especially if it was something that spoke to them directly. Sometimes, and I would say a lot of the times, they don't remember them at all. So repurposing content is definitely something that I do. I would say at least minimum 1 to 2 of my posts in a week is repurposed. If I get to a point that maybe it's a busy month or it's a month that I have a lot going on, I do sometimes repurpose up to 3 posts in a month. And I've never run into any issues. So definitely after you create enough content, repurposing the content and reusing your own content is something that you can definitely do. The next thing is I create diverse content formats. So I'm on YouTube, as you can see here, and I typically create content on YouTube also on a monthly basis. I batch content as well. But from one longer YouTube video, I'm typically able to get a lot more shorter form videos that I will repurpose on LinkedIn. So that's a strategy also to get repurposed content. And sometimes I may have a YouTube topic that I've spoken about in 4 or 5 minutes, but then I'll make a shorter version of that same topic in a video for LinkedIn. So that's another way that I repurpose content as well. Typically what has worked for my brand is I do a lot of video posts as well as posts with a picture or that kind of Twitter style image. That's typically what has worked for me on LinkedIn. At some point, I was doing text-only posts. They don't work as well for me. They do great for certain people, so I'm not saying don't use them at all. I would actually encourage you to use them, especially if you're an introvert and that works. I think, you know, as I've used video a lot, that's maybe what the algorithm expects of me. And so when I do video content, it typically gets a lot more impressions than other form of content. I do use AI to simplify my process. I use it in different ways. So for example, there was a prompt that I found on Instagram, I believe, and it was like, tell me 10 dreams, aspirations, and pain points that this client group has. And so that's a prompt that I've used in AI to be able to get ideas of different kinds of content that I can create based on my target audience. Another way that I use AI is that I was telling you I repurpose posts. So I'll use the prompt like rewrite this LinkedIn post as though it's a brand new post. And then I'll put the post, and then AI will use the same tone and the same language because it already has that example, but it'll just use different words to improve the post. So sometimes I'll use a prompt like create a new post with a stronger hook. So if I'm trying to repurpose a very similar post, but I just want to make the hook stronger or change the focus, I'll sometimes use AI to help me do that. So those are just ways that I use AI to work smarter and quicker. I don't necessarily use AI to write my post from scratch. Like I won't tell ChatGPT write a LinkedIn post about this, because I don't necessarily like the writing and the way it's going to come out. I rather have something, an idea, something that I'm going for, a style that I'm going for, and then ask it for improvements or adjustments or, you know, a word to use here or there. So that's typically how I'm using AI to create my LinkedIn content. And then from there, I start the writing process from all these different sources, from my ideas in Asana, from my YouTube videos, from my short form videos, from the repurposed content. I go through all these sources and I'm like, what am I focusing on this month? This month, I want to talk more about the introvert at work quiz. Or this month, I want to talk more about advance her career. So whatever my focus is for that month, then I will create content that's more around that topic. And then I typically sit down when I have the opportunity, some quiet time to really sit down and think and create content. That's how I typically do it. And I'll spend 3 hours typically is on average how long I spend to create all that content. And then from there, I schedule it. I do sometimes create content on the spot, but I would say it's very, 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 very rare for me because I have a very packed schedule and there's no way that every single day I'm going to sit there and find a couple of minutes to write a LinkedIn post. And I'm sure for people who do it, their post is more, it's fresh and maybe it's coming straight from their mind and it's something they're feeling at that time, but I just don't have that kind of time to do it. So I also have learned that I need to have a system that works for me at the point that I am in my life. Maybe in the future I will have the time and the ability to create content on the spot, but where I am currently, I have to adjust and adapt to where I am and create systems that align with my current situation. And that has meant for me scheduling content. So I schedule my content directly in LinkedIn. I was really happy when they added that feature. Before scheduling directly in LinkedIn, I used to use a website called later.com. So that's another tool that you can use if you want to schedule your content. But really using LinkedIn right now works very well for me. My content is scheduled for a few weeks ahead. Typically what I do is if I have a couple of minutes, I will try to see, what post is going out on this day or that day. And I sometimes adjust things around because of my mood or whatever. I may switch one post from this day to another day, or maybe I just went to a networking event, I want to talk about it, I had a speaking engagement and I want to talk about it, so I'll move things around to talk about what's happening at that point. But typically I schedule my content. I do put reminders for myself in my Google Calendar so I remember that a post is going out, because I notice that sometimes I forget. And you don't want to post and ghost. That's something that you don't want to do because it impacts your post. But I will say that I've definitely done it before, because my posts typically go out around 8:35 in the morning. And on a given day, I may be dropping off my son at school, or I may be on my way to work, or I may have a speaking engagement. I may be doing different things at that time. So at that specific time, I'm not necessarily able to engage and comment. But when I do have some time in the morning, typically I'll spend 15 to 30 minutes to respond to comments and engage as much as possible. And I dedicate time for that. I don't want to spend too much time on LinkedIn because there's a lot going on the platform and it's easy to get carried away. So I have dedicated times that I focus on, okay, this is engagement and I'm responding to comments on my post. All right, so that's my process in terms of how I create a month's worth of content in 3 hours. If you're new to creating content on LinkedIn and have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments. I'll be more than happy to support you in your journey to ensure that you are being successful as you begin this process of creating content on LinkedIn. If you're like, I'm taking this LinkedIn thing seriously and you want to know how to get started, I have a 14-day guide right here in terms of how to get started on LinkedIn. I'll see you in that video. Take care.